with meeting with others in person that have the same interests at our lab with pizza and soft drinks and beers or whatever. As long as everybody's comfortable with it, you can do it at your will. And also, we're going to continue doing this on Zoom for anyone who finds it more convenient. But I thank you all for being a part of this this new event that we have. We have a really exciting talk tonight, and I will leave it up to John, who is we're lucky enough to have help coordinate all of these things, to introduce our featured speaker. And I'm going to sign off video wise. I'll jump on again at the end. Thanks for joining.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. So some of you know me as John. For many years, I worked for Quardev as their manager of corporate intellect, and I've since moved to eBay for the last 10 years, or it seems just yesterday I was at Quardev. And I kind of defected from the world of testing into the world of program management, and came back to QASIG to do a talk about that. What's life like on the other side of the wall between notions of quality and those who need to get reports about how it's going. And at the end of that talk, someone joked that I should start a PMSIG. And first I dismissed it, and then I thought about it more, and I talked with Shelley and thought that would be cool. So the PMSIG is for project, product, and program. So the 3 Ps. Anybody who's in that vein as a manager. And I'm the speaker chairman and have been since about September was our first one of these. So we go every even month. And so I look out for speakers. So if you have ideas or if you want to recommend a speaker, please reach out to me. And it's tough to find speakers during the summer months. So I went to the well on this one, and I asked my brother James, who has been in testing for over 30 years, if he would do a new talk about what he would advise program managers to be aware of or to consider from the testing community, from their testing peers. And so he created a talk that I haven't yet seen all of yet. So I'm excited to kick it off, and I may interject some things as he invited me to do. And so welcome, James. This is called How the Ps, the Program Project Product Managers Can Mind the Qs, which is all the quality folks. So fire away.
We have a little clarification there popping up like that. So this is how I like doing talks. I like to prepare all the materials, be ready to do it, and then I want my brother to come in and yell at me about it or comment or whatever. React in any way you see fit, John, and it'll make it more fun for me. So, how the Ps can mind the Qs. Here we go. Well, I want to start with this idea. It is popular in the Agile world, which we are all caught up in now because the non-Agilists have been driven to live with the dwarf mammoths on remote islands in somewhere north of Hudson Bay. We've driven to think about testing, a lot of us, as something that should be everybody's responsibility, which is a very dangerous idea, actually. It's dangerous not because it's wrong exactly. It's because it drains the blood out of testing. It drains the motivation out of it. If you want bad testing, definitely say it's everybody's responsibility. And by the way, the same thing is true about accounting. If you want your company to have poor accounting, don't have an accountant. Just tell everyone they should devote a little bit of their day to helping keep the books for your company, and you're going to have bad accounting or bad tax planning. So testing is one of those things that requires focus to do it well. That doesn't mean, this is important, it doesn't mean that testing should only be done by testers. It doesn't mean that you need a whole bunch of testers, but it means that someone needs to feel that it is their responsibility to make the testing go well. That's what I mean. Even if you don't call that person a tester, and often these days they're called things like quality coaches. God, I hate that term, but some people like to say that. I saw a company that had no testers, but it had a test manager. And the purpose of the test manager was to evangelize for testing. And that can work, particularly if it's the right person for the job. So I'm going to start with the idea that you have somebody in your company who is taking responsibility for testing, and that person might be part-time at it, and they might not even be called a tester, but somebody feels responsible for testing, and maybe more than one person, maybe several people feel responsible for the testing. It's those people that I'm talking about minding when I say how the meat peas can mind the cues. Whoever those people are who say, my job is at least partly to test, and I want to take that job seriously. Okay, so how can the product managers, program managers, project managers support that? Well, now I'm going to relate a dynamic. And what I'm about to say is an oversimplification. It's not just a simplification, it's an oversimplification, but there's some interesting truth to the dynamic that I'm going to lay out here. Let's say you want to take your job seriously as a tester, and you test deeply. Well, the thing about testing deeply is that it takes time, and it also finds bugs. It finds elusive bugs. That's how I define deep testing. Deep testing is the testing you have to do to reliably find every important bug. If you want to be highly effective at finding every single bug that matters, you might not find every single bug, but you want to find the bugs that matter. You're going to have to test in deep and subtle ways, and that's going to take time. You're going to need tools, you're going to need knowledge, you're going to need a rich test data and all that sort of thing. This leads to a little problem. Nobody likes you because you are the bad news bearer. And so one alternative then is you could go, okay, all right, you win. I'll just test shallowly. I'll just run a smattering of test cases. I'll shuffle some papers around. I'll focus on GUI automation, which is always shallow testing. Well, the problem with that is then bugs get into the field that are important bugs, and people look at you and go, what's wrong with you, tester? You should have found these bugs. And people don't like you. And then you don't want to be a tester anymore. So testers are at risk of depression. They feel like outsiders. They feel like people tense up when they're around. You know, just because I, as a tester, high five the other testers whenever I find a humiliating problem in your product, you don't like me anymore? Yes, that's exactly right. So now, John, you as a tester, I mean, you were at Quardev too, as a testing consultant, as people in outsourcing companies are outsiders already. But do you agree with this dynamic? I mean, it's a bit of an oversimplification because there's more things going on. But does anything strike you as wrong about this?
I think for me, it was also a balance of course, the emphasis is on what could go wrong, what's broken that we don't know about, and how do we find the breaks that are already there? Because we don't break anything, we discover the breaks. But to temper that and balance that with, hey, I tested this. This is pretty cool. This is my experience of how it works. I didn't expect that. That was nice. So I guess politically, in a way, socially, you can still be a deep tester and say, this was this cool feature. I really like this, and here's what happened. But on the whole,
we do more than find bugs. The tester can be positive and praise the product, and that's also true. It's just that's not the tester's purpose. It's the reason why I exist is not to make you feel good. The reason why I exist is to protect you. I want to protect you from trouble. That's why my focus has to be on trouble. And even when there's no trouble, it has to be my focus, the same way that the TSA has to focus on finding weapons in your bags, even though they'd like to wish you a happy trip. That's not their job. So we have this really negative focus. You see what I mean? And there's no getting away from that. It's a negative focus. And if you do get away from that, then you destroy the effectiveness of the testing.
Yeah. Here's another emotional component is evaluation. And to me, testing is about discovery, but it's also about evaluation. It's your opinion and your experience and your oracles and heuristics that you use with your experience with other products. And you can say, if you only had 1 hour to test something, you could do a coverage outline and do some shallow testing at first, and then make a one-page report saying, all right, this is what I think is useful about this, but here's what I would drill down on. Here's where the risks are, the things likely to go wrong. So that's what I mean too about the balance. If you only have a few hours to test, for example, or if you're doing
you do shallow testing.
Yeah.
And as on this slide here, one of the things I suggest that would help the situation, and these are all things that the P's can do, okay, that would help the testing process, would help create a better atmosphere. The overarching idea is create a nurturing atmosphere for testing. Think about testers as if they were rare orchids that you're trying to grow for market, and any little thing will kill them. And you might wonder, well, why are our testers so delicate? Well, actually, any craftsmanship is delicate. Craftsmanship is something that takes time to grow in layers, and you need to have the focus. You need to have high morale and develop pride. And it just takes one bad manager to create an environment where people go, I don't feel like being a craftsman anymore. I'm not respected. What benefit is it bringing to me? Nothing. I might as well just go somewhere else, or else stay here and collect a paycheck and not try very hard. So it's craftsmanship of any kind requires sort of hothouse conditions. It requires leadership that's going to be sensitive leadership. Unless you've hired people who are incredibly assertive craftsmen. And I'm like that. I'm a very assertive craftsman, partly because I'm old now, so I don't take any guff, as old people say, about this stuff. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You hired me, so sit back and watch what I do. I'm the expert. That's my attitude. But I wasn't so much like that when I was a young man. I was more malleable, more trying to please. and more wondering what I could do to please people than I do now that I am more comfortable in my own skin and I know what I'm about. So you got to create a nurturing environment for testing. Now, what do you do to do that? You need to normalize their negativity. You need to say, yes, let your hatred grow. Well, not exactly in those terms, but similar to that. You need to say, look, thank testers for reporting bugs. If they're really good bug reports, thank them for that. This is a great bug report. I'm so glad you found this. If it's a bad bug report that they shouldn't have written, thank them for it anyway, but for a different reason. What you can say is, okay, this is not a bug for these reasons. This is not something that we're going to do anything about. This is a mistake you made. I see you thought it was this, but it's really that. However, thank you for reporting it. You see, anytime you think something's wrong, I want you to report it, and then give me a chance to look at it and decide if it's important. But what I'm worried about, tester, is if you get too concerned about what I think is a bug, then you'll start censoring yourself. And then one of those things you censor yourself on is going to be an important bug that you won't realize how important it is. And I won't even see it. So I'll never get a chance. So I want you to err on the side of go ahead and report it. If you really don't know if something is a bug or not, and you're not sure if you should report it because you don't want to waste my time, then just come and talk to me about it. Put it on Slack. Give me a one-liner on Slack. Drop a screenshot to me and say, what do you think? I don't know if this is a problem or not. Now, one of the stories I tell in class is of a young tester named Jonathan Bach. Before he even built his first testing lightsaber, his first job, my brother John, was at Microsoft. The first real job as a tester, Microsoft. And I remember, John, a few weeks after you were hired, you called me and said, I found my first bug that was a really good bug. And you were really excited about that. Do you remember what that was?
No.
Oh, I'll tell you, because I remember. I tell stories about this. Okay.
Remind me.
John Bunyan and his blue ox. The bug was that you were trying to figure out how to use this feature in the product and you couldn't get the feature to work. So you finally asked the program manager, all right, how do I find this feature? And he went like, oh my God, we forgot to implement it, and went and ran away. And you said, oh,
right.
I just found a bug. But the way that you found it is you're confused and you reached out and reported your confusion, right? And it was your confusion confidence of talking to someone about, I give up.
Right.
How do you make this thing work?
I remember what you told me. I said, oh, I feel bad. I'm confused. I'm not smart enough. And you said something I've never forgotten. You said, John, you're confused because something confusing is going on. And it just made me feel like normal. Like that's why it's confusing. Right. It's not just me. It may be confusing to anybody. So
I'm sure I must have got that quote from the Sphinx on the Mystery Men movie.
From Mystery Men, right? So everything
confusion is caused by the confusing. Mr. Furious.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to be thinking. And one of the things that comes to mind, if you've ever been to Australia, or if you're ever fortunate enough to go to Australia, you have to declare anything that might be organic when you come through customs. And they make a list of the things you're supposed to declare, and it's a pretty inclusive list. So I had cough drops, and I'm like, are cough drops food? I don't think so. I'll declare them anyway. So I declared my toothpaste and my cough drops, and they said, oh, those aren't a problem. but thank you for declaring them. They always make a special point of thanking people for declaring things that I'm sure inside their heads, they're rolling their eyes going like, toothpaste, really? You're going to waste my time with toothpaste? But they always smile and thank you for declaring it. And it makes me feel good about declaring it every time. I know I'm probably wasting their time, but hey, they want me to err on the side of declaring things. And maybe I'm going to have some like toothpaste one day that has special natural bug guts toothpaste that my wife will give me, and they'll suddenly think that's a problem. Komodo dragon toothpaste. Okay, so
yeah, I have a quick thing for the audience. Whether or not you're a project manager, a program manager, a product manager, think about this, and then for the Q&A at the end. Do you take bugs more seriously if they come from an outsourced company that your company has hired versus the ones that come from your internal quality engineers or testers? And James, what's been your experience when you've been hired as an outsourced consultant or who's hired for that sole purpose of discovering important risks and problems? Do students in your classes say, hey, yeah, they listen to you, James, but they don't listen to me, the testers in your classes that come from companies, the internal ones? Is there a different ethos there between external and internal?
There could be, but I can't tell. I mean, I've worked in outsourcing companies. I've had them work for me. I've taught at them. I've done all the combinations, and I honestly can't tell if they do or not. You and I have been on. You and I were on an outsourcing thing where we were the test lab, and we were working with, I think it was Hewlett Packard, and we found it was a 2-week project or something, and we found a zillion problems, and we were sure they were going to extend the project, and they just closed the project down. Like, we're like, this thing has a whole bunch of serious problems in it. You should want us to keep going. And I remember that we tried to talk to the developers about the bugs we were finding, and they wouldn't talk to us. We were like screened off from them by some admin who was taking the bug reports and wouldn't let us talk to the developers. And then a year later, I found out from an insider in Hewlett Packard that they didn't like our work. And no one ever told us. No one ever told us they didn't like our work. I think we were just set up to fail in that situation. It was someone was trying to prove a point. And the point was, we hate outsourcing companies. And so they just deliberately sabotaged our project. So I don't know. All I know is that outsourced companies are even more outsidery than the testers are who were inside. So if you're closer to the people and to the project, you probably have more leverage, I would think. But maybe there's this other thing going on where if you're an outsourced company, they think of your bugs as more official, or maybe they paid for your bug reports. So they take them more seriously. It's called the endowment effect. Maybe, I don't know. I can't really tell if there's a general principle there. Well, anyway, other thing I want to say about this slide is you should distinguish shallow testing from deep testing. And you might not know how to do that, but it's important to start doing that and to start working out how to do that. I can help you, of course. I've got ideas about this, but it's really useful as a non-tester, but as a client of testing, to help the testers by distinguishing between, this is a thing that we do not need deep testing for, but this is a thing you should do deep testing on. As testers are going to spend more time. Deep testing is costly, and it leads to a more thorough understanding of the product, of course. But lots of things it's okay to do shallow testing on. And a word from the managers is extremely helpful for a tester at figuring out where should I put most of my effort. Think about this. When a tester is testing, they have a certain pile of poker chips and they're essentially betting on a roulette wheel. Should I put some chips on 24 black or 15 red? Should I spread my chips out or should I pile them all up on one? And if you can say, oh, well, the roulette wheel's rigged and 15 black never wins, so don't bother betting on that, then that helps the tester quite a bit. So you can be like Rick in Casablanca, telling the tester where to put the bet so that he can get the exit visa from Casablanca, to stretch that metaphor beyond its earthly limits. Now, testability is one of the big things that you can help with. And part of helping with it is to get testers to talk about it, get testers to take it seriously, get testers to lead on this. Actually, it's a natural place for the leadership to be, is with testers. But in a theme that's going to come back again and again when I talk to you about this, you product managers, project managers, program managers, you have so much influence at nudging the testers and helping them be the best that they can be. So you should know a little bit about testability at least. And there's basically 5 kinds of testability that I like to talk about, that I try to teach testers how to talk about. And they have some funny names, so excuse me. I come from a philosophy background. Epistemic testability, which just sounds fun to say. What that means is it's how easy something gets to test when you already have tested it. It's kind of like if you're going to run a marathon, it's particularly easy to run only the last 10 feet of the marathon as opposed to running the entire marathon. So if you can get a ride on a pickup truck to the last 10 feet and then just run through the tape after that, it'll be an easier marathon for you. So what does that mean in terms of testing? It means that if you build something with standardized components as opposed to everything built from scratch, it's easier to test that thing because those components are already trusted. You know, if you're using Chrome as a basis for your web app, then you don't have to test Chrome. It's already there. So there's less for the tester to do. Similarly, if you are careful with your change control at the end of a project, they've already tested everything, and then you make a little change and you're very careful about how you do it, then there's not a lot of regression testing that's needed. Whereas if you make big disruptive changes, then that lowers epistemic testability because it's pulled us farther from that tape at the end of the race. And we have to run farther to get back to that tape. So that's what epistemic testability is. Epistemic has to do with knowledge. What do you already know about the product? Subjective testability is testability that has to do with the tester. So sometimes things are easier to test because the tester knows how to test it. And sometimes things are harder to test because the tester doesn't know how to test it. For that reason, I'm happy to be a coding tester. So I can write code to develop tools that I need for myself. I don't have to wait for someone else to do it. So certain things are easier for me to test than they are for other people. However, my coding background also might obscure my vision because it might give me biases about how easy things are to deal with. And maybe someone who is less technical will have a better time finding the right bugs in something than I will because they have a different set of biases that more favor what the user would experience. So subjective testability is subjective. It depends on the tester. It depends on your point of view. The point is that some aspects of testability are inside the tester himself. Project-related testability has to do with the things going on in the project that make it easier for the tester to do their job. And so that means project-related testability, that's a P right there. That's your world. That's what you control. And you can make things a lot easier for the tester if you are easier to talk to, if you care more about the tester's problems. Value-related testability has to do with, can we notice the bugs? What do we need to notice good bugs? Well, we need to know about the users. We need to understand real usage patterns. We need to maybe have real user data. We need to know the difference between a bad problem and a not so bad problem. And that requires knowledge of user environments and all that kind of thing. And then intrinsic testability is what a lot of people just call testability. And that's how the design of the product makes testing easier or harder. A nice example of that is comprehensive logging. If I have a product that's logging all the things that are happening, I can keep track of what I've tested and what I haven't tested more easily. I don't have to just remember it. I might find hidden problems because I examine the logs. So all those aspects of testability, if they're maximized somehow, the tester is going to be happier, the tester is going to be more productive. And you can do a lot to help these things by how you are able to interact with the tester, but also how you're able to control the project. Now, biases. Biases can be a bad thing, but we can make them work for us. How? How about how, James? Okay. Celebrate the cleansing fires of testing. Well, what's that about? What that means is let me take the opposite. Let's say that we say, oh, testing is a necessary evil. We just have to, yes, testing doesn't actually create any value, but it's something you have to do. So let's just grin and bear it. I mean, what that does is it makes people feel a sense of being a victim. You know, we just have to slog through this miserable part of our lives. And what that gets is a bias toward getting out of it as soon as possible, doing as little of it as you can get away with. But if instead you connect that to our identity as strong people, we say, bring it on. We say, let's enjoy this process of being scoured by the testers who are always looking for trouble. I welcome you, IRS auditors, for I am clean and virtuous. And when we screw up, great. That just means we're going to learn some more stuff. What I used to say when I was a manager is, look, when you make an expensive mistake, tester, it's like that you accidentally bought a copy machine for our department. You accidentally spent $7,000 you got drunk and the company credit card got a little bit loose in your hand. And suddenly we're being delivered a really fancy water cooler, that's from Japan. And we can't return it because it's got saliva all over it or whatever. Now, what are we going to do? We might as well enjoy it. Let's figure out what the advantages are of having this new piece of office equipment that we never wanted, but we're darn well gonna enjoy it now. That's it. That's an attitude that says, I am not a victim. I am not a victim of mistakes. I'm not a victim of failure. I am going to embrace it because you might as well embrace it. It happened, so let's deal with it.
Yeah, I tested the wrong build for a whole day once, but and then I was acquainted with that knowledge at the end of the day, and I felt so bad. And the developer was like, Actually, you found a couple of bugs that we didn't find. We should do the new build as well because there was no plan for it. So
Well, the next couple things here, John, this is what I tell people you're the expert at. I think that my brother Jonathan is the finest test manager I've ever met in this department. The idea of making testers feel good about themselves as testers, making them feel smart, high morale. This is why I think you're wasted at eBay as a program manager. They should have you be king of testers at eBay. That's what they should have. You should be like Robert the Bruce leading the testers against Edward the First. I just looked that up earlier today on Wikipedia, so I know what I'm talking about. I was actually trying to find out about
isn't that from Braveheart? Was that from Braveheart too? Was it
yeah,
Robert
he was
the
a
Bruce
minor
and-
character in Braveheart, but he was actually a bigger character in real life. So, but I see you get your history from Mel Gibson movies.
From
I get
Netflix.
mine from Wikipedia, so I am more learned.
Get it from reality show.
So challenge the testers to find more bugs. You can find better the bugs than this. I know you can. Connect their pride to this, and you've got to respect testers, but if this is a subtle move, there's a price to respect, and that's excellence. You need to be getting better and better, tester. I know you can do it, but you know, we have a high standard around here of testing, and you can live up to that standard. You guys, you Ps, you are the primary clients of testing. I guess you could argue that developers might be the primary clients, but I think the developers just are doing their thing. It's really more the P staff are the people who are actively talking about this stuff, and so they end up being the most prominent kind of client that testers have. And so they want your respect, and they want to feel like you think they're good at their job. So absolutely give them that respect. Sometimes you have to give them that respect a little bit on credit and then let them earn it later on. Which is very much like another P, which is called parenting. You have to do that as a parent to give your child a little more respect than they deserve, and then they kind of grow into that. This is a bit controversial, but I recommend that if your product is unfortunately too good, you're going to have to put bugs into it on purpose. This is a very legitimate psychological issue. They have to do this with search dogs. I saw a documentary about a cadaver dog that was searching an earthquake site in Turkey or something. And the dog was getting depressed because he searched for all day and hadn't found any dead people. So at the end of the day, they have to take a volunteer and have them hide in the rubble so the dog can go, oh, I found somebody, and be happy. Because the dog will get depressed, and then the dog will stop trying if the dog doesn't experience a certain amount of success. So the problem with people who search for rare things for a living is depression, is keeping their motivation up. Their senses get dulled. It's the same thing with the TSA. What they do to keep people at the TSA sharp is they put fake bombs through, I'm told, every day. Every day a fake device gets snuck through. And so the people who are doing security at the airports, they're not really looking for actual terrorists. Those hardly ever come along. They're trying to catch their own bosses sneaking something by them. That's what they're actually motivated by every day. They know it's going to happen, so they know they have to stay sharp. And that's why on all those old Star Trek shows, John, they're always able to sneak up on the guards and then hit them with the karate chop to the neck. And because the guards are thinking there's probably nobody coming. I don't need to be sharp. No one ever comes. But if their captain of the guard was constantly sneaking up on them doing that like every day, they would be ready, and Captain Kirk would not be able to get the drop on him so easy. All right, and replace the last guy in the line with someone dressed in that guy's clothes. Come on. That's just poor preparation. Okay, so let me do the last part of this. Here's the last part. John and I grew up in Vermont, and they teach us in Vermont, which has a lot of forest and a lot of bears. Although I never saw a bear while I was there, so I don't know. But they told us there were bears.
I was going to say, what are you talking about?
Come to think of it,
bear. That's the bear until I came to Washington.
Could there have been Kodiak bears in the city park? I swear, maybe they were exaggerating.
I think it was an M. Night Shyamalan movie you're talking about.
Well, we were told that if you see any cute little bear cubs, don't go near them, because somewhere there's a mama bear. You don't get between a mama bear and the cubs, or else things can happen. And this is the problem with DevOps, because DevOps really should have been called Dev Livery. I don't know why they called it DevOps. Some dorky ops guy must have named it. If I had been asked to name it, I would have said, what is DevOps, or what is this thing you want to name? What you want to name is the process of taking delivery and development and smashing them together into one big blob. What do we call that? How about Dev Livery? That's what my little play on words generator comes up with. So the thing is when you slam together development and delivery, what gets squeezed? The tester gets squeezed and end up being shifted left. This is what shift left is, my friends. You just got left shifted, tester, right there. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be that you ride the bear. The bear is supposed to be your friend, but it often doesn't work out that way. And we need to cope with this. So what I'm really saying is that people are constantly telling testers these days, oh, well, you have to automate everything, because if you don't automate it, there's no time. And we're doing DevOps, so it has to be really fast. You have 5 minutes to do your testing after we do development. And then it's going out to release, no matter what. And then there's a global internet shutdown like there was yesterday because of a bug that they didn't catch. I'm sure that they probably didn't have a whole lot of time to do testing on that. Maybe they're looking at each other now saying, we just bought ourselves a fancy water cooler from Japan. What are we going to do about it? So the thing is, deep testing is a business decision, because deep testing takes time. Shallow testing doesn't take much time, but deep testing does. You can't automate deep testing. You can, I'm in favor of automation, although automation becomes an obsession and we have to watch out about that. But automation isn't automating the testing. It's automating output checking. It's creating shallow testing. To get into deep testing, testers need to convince you, my P friends, they must convince you that time must be made for it, because you control the clock. You are the time masters. And they must appeal to you for that. So what I tell them is that they've got to learn how to talk about risk. You can help them learn to talk about risk. So if I were in your team and I'm a tester and I'm trying to say, look, we need to spend a couple of days testing this, or a week testing this. We can't just go out in a few hours. You've made some really destabilizing changes. Then I need to be ready to answer questions like you see on the screen here. What are the problems that are going to get by the automation tester? Why are you so concerned about that? What, give me examples. How come those are even possible? Why do you even think those kinds of problems could be in the product? What makes them possible? What's the worst that can happen, tester? Maybe we just roll back. Yeah, okay. Well, like they rolled back yesterday with that global internet outage. I mean, they solved the problem very quickly, and they still had an incredibly expensive disaster on their hands. So you can help with that. Here's another thing you can help with. Think about this. Think about this curve here. Now, this curve is based on my intuition, but perhaps you share this intuition. Think about it. We can try to develop more quickly. If we develop too slowly, we might make no progress at all. Like if you have a major project that you create, like let's build a new operating system. And you say, the way I want to do it is to work on it for 5 minutes every week. And then in several years, we'll have really gotten started at this. Well, 5 minutes a week, 20 minutes a week, even 35 minutes a week, you're probably going to make zero progress at all, ever, no matter how many weeks that you go, because every week is going to be taken up with trying to remember what you did last week. And then whoops, the time is up. I think you have to go a certain speed in development to make much forward progress at all. That's what this notch is there. So let's say we put enough focus in so we're actually making some kind of progress. But we're not making as much progress as we could make if we were to push harder. So we push harder, we go faster. That's all fine. But at a certain point, if you keep pushing and trying to test, trying to develop and test faster and faster, then technical debt starts mounting up. Technical debt is all these loose ends, right? All this this mess on your desk that never goes away, except you have a clean desk policy. So what do? Sweep it into a filing cabinet and close it. Now it's even messier. And we start chasing our own tail and cleaning up after messes that we accidentally spilled coffee all over our blueprints, like in one of those movies. and then we build something that accidentally becomes alive, like a Disney movie with Kurt Russell, if you remember that one. And that kind of thing happens. So we have this thing, I'll call it zone of power, zones of regret.
Before you get into that, can you take a quick minute and define the axes? Because I have a couple of notions of what each one means to me. What do you mean by productivity and velocity?
What I mean by velocity is the number of work items of approximately equivalent mass, if you will, that you attempt to do in a given period of time.
Okay.
So trying to write code faster. So I've got these features and I say, I'm going to get 3 of these features. I've got a list of 15 of them. I'm going to get 3 of them done today. Darn it. And so how am I going to get 3 of them done today? Well, maybe I'm going to skip some things. Maybe I don't do as much testing as I otherwise would like to do as a developer, or maybe the tester who works for me doesn't work on that so much. Like for instance, I was actually doing this the other day I'm working with Tricentis right now. We're building test tools and I'm responsible for designing these things, but because often design is better communicated by showing them something, I'm writing code to create prototypes and then I show them the prototypes. Well, I built something that involved a query engine. And as I was building it, I said, I really need to test this thing. And I thought of some ways to test it, but they all would take like a couple of days to work it all out. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of time. I got to get this prototype done. So that testing just didn't happen. So I'm taking more risk. Now it's a prototype, so that's all right. Except there's a risk that when I demo it, and someone says, try this, I'm going to try it. And then it'll go like, it'll give me a syntax error. It'll crash or something. And I go, hey, it was working before, I swear to you. So that's what I mean. You try to push more work items in. Now, net productivity, by that I mean, how much forward progress do you actually make? So think about this. What if you take 5 steps forward and you have to take 1 step back? That's a net productivity of 4 steps. But what if you take 5 steps forward and you have to take 4 steps back? That's net productivity of 1 step. What if you take 10 steps forward, which seems like higher velocity, but you have to take 9 steps back or 11 steps back? So that net productivity is your actual, what you actually accomplish.
So both are about getting stuff done, the 2 axes, but productivity seems like traction, like it landed, like the stuff that you're doing actually
Right. Velocity is the wheels are going faster, and productivity is, did you actually move?
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah, good idea. And actually kind of suggests a new visual metaphor I can use with a little animated car with a bear riding in it. Wouldn't that be fun? Running over a tester.
For you, yeah.
Okay, that'll be in the next version of these slides.
Okay.
Now, I'm not sure these are the right words. I think that the words on the end are right, and I'm still kind of wondering about these other ones. But so if you don't have enough velocity, you're just kind of dabbling, you're drifting, like one of those many projects we've seen at airports in our childhood, John, of the guy who's building a biplane and he never seems to make any progress on it.
Right.
You come back 3 years later and the wing has moved a little bit and everything else is exactly the same. Versus a reckless kind of progress. I mean, I think we can easily see that. It's a little less clear what these other ones are. I chose the word prudent, but I don't know if prudent is the right word. Maybe effective. I'm not exactly sure. Optimal. Well, that's sort of redundant. So I don't know, but if you're generally, you're careful, you're trying to be not too fast and not too slow. It's the Goldilocks place you're trying to find. Now, the way we achieve this is it's tester versus bear. The tester tries to defend the project from going too fast, and the product managers, the program managers, are trying to defend the project against going too slowly. And this is very reasonable for the bear to be doing, unless the cubs are on this side. Now, we just need to realize that sometimes the market can't go as fast as we can go. So we are imagining like, oh, we got all these great features and our customers are not even going to use the features. They don't even want to upgrade. Oh, another app upgrade again. Every week I have to update this app. Evernote to me is like that. Evernote, I am just about to give up on Evernote. They're constantly updating their product and it never gets better. They say it's getting better, but it seems to me it's getting slower and glitchier. I think that they are I think they're both getting in front of the market and they're operating recklessly. So it's just something to think about. What you need to realize, though, is sometimes you need to go a certain speed because even though the market doesn't care, you have to keep your own engineers happy, and they'll get bored and depressed unless they can develop something new and bolt it onto the thing that they've already been doing. So there are various considerations here. Also, you might think that the market can't keep up with you, but you think, what if a competitor comes along and they do something that makes the market change? We can't let that happen without a fight. So there could be various reasons why you want to get ahead. But of course, the thing that I'm more concerned about is this. And that is, what if you can't go fast enough for the market? This is what this is like. It's like when you're trying to rush someone to the hospital in your car and you're worried they're going to die before you can get them to the emergency room. So what do? You're going to run red lights, and running red lights carries a risk, but you're going to do it anyway because you have to do everything you can to solve this problem. And so I think this is a situation that the product people, program people, project people, that UPs, you really are in this situation a lot of the times these days, or you feel that you are, you legitimately feel that you are, which is the situation where testing is legitimately saying, hey, we're gonna be running the risk, and you say, yeah, and that's what we have to do. We have to go perhaps faster than we can safely go, or we'll lose everything. I had this exact thing at Borland International when I was on the Borland C++ team as a test manager years ago. I made a list of top 10 reasons why you will regret shipping this product at this time. And I sent it to the VP of the business unit. And he sent me back this really nice letter, this email, which you should be writing to testers. He did a really good job of this, I thought. He said, James, thank you for your top 10 list of reasons why I shouldn't sleep at night. He said, I actually agree with you, but we're going to ship anyway. And the reason we're releasing is if we don't release in this quarter, I will have to lay off 30 people from the team, and I don't want to do that. I am going to keep the integrity of our team, even if it means that we will have to have some apologies that we make to our customers or deal with some bad publicity. We'll try to make it up with customer service, really good customer service. But you were right. You're right to warn me about this. Thank you. You see how he thanked me? I felt so good about it. I said, all right, I did my job, I said. And he said, all right, you did your job. And then what happened was everything was great. We didn't have a problem. We didn't regret it. So I had to write him again, like 3 months after that, saying, okay, I've looked at what's happened, and I maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was too cautious. And I acknowledged that. So, I knew that I had to do that because I wanted to keep credibility with him. So I needed him to see that I was learning from my mistakes. And I told him I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah, I like what you've done on this graphic, because I've always struggled with the difference between cautious and prudent. And you've given kind of purchase to my feeling that I'm just trying to be prudent. But maybe I'm cautious.
There is an interesting difference, and I'm looking for the right words. I could have switched cautious and prudent, maybe, but maybe I should say over cautious. I'm not sure. I'm working on it.
Yeah,
but
no,
anyway, that's my presentation, folks. Thank you for
Awesome.
listening.
Okay.
If there are
all
any
right.
reactions, we're happy
Let's
to
do that. Let's open the floor to questions. We've already got one in the queue. This one from Ben Bronsky, who I used to manage years ago. Thank you, Ben. So he asks, when you were defining velocity, you mentioned it was the number of tickets attempted. I always thought of it as the number of tickets completed. I'm sure you have a good reason to view it as attempted instead of completed. So what is that reason?
Oh, I have no reason to say attempted instead of completed. I think the reason for saying attempted instead of completed is I haven't thought about it as deeply as I ought to. And now I'll think about it more deeply, thanks to you. There might be an important difference between attempted and completed. I think there maybe isn't an important difference, because when people say they completed something, they might be fudging. They might say, well, when I squint, it feels like I completed it, so I'll just mark it as completed. Versus attempted might be exactly the same thing, but the person says, I maybe could get away with saying I completed it, but I just don't feel it's complete. So, I mean, there might be exactly the same situation. Either way, more attempted and more completed is a velocity related concept. I think there's no precise definition of velocity because there's no precise definition of work items. The work items are whatever you think they are. And I saw a paper recently that's quite fascinating, a paper about how developers feel about their own productivity and how they measure their own productivity. And the paper was in 2 parts. And I can provide this paper, by the way. Remind me, John, and I'll give you the link to it or something. But the paper was divided into 2 parts. One was a survey. So they surveyed like 400 developers. I'm going to bring up the reference paper right now because I have it right here. And the other part was they then watched 11 developers. I think they were mostly at Microsoft. They watched 11 developers actually working. And what they found out was that when they surveyed the developers said stuff like, I think the single most popular measure of progress was work items completed. That was out of all the different things that were suggested, they said, yes, that's the one that makes the most sense to us. And then when they were watching the developers, though, they noticed that the developers were constantly getting interrupted and interrupting themselves and interrupting the progress of getting work items done. And then they asked the developers that they were watching, do you feel productive? And the answer was, yeah, that was a really productive day. So the study was just pointing out that there seems to be a disconnect there between what people say is productivity and what they feel is productivity when they're actually looked at very closely.
Yeah, you've got a deck called The Secret Life of Testers, which is important for PMs to know, to get a really good, sometimes second by second look, minute by minute look, at least that's practical, of a tester's day, given 3 major activities that PMs could wrap their heads around, and why some days it may not seem like they're very productive and other days they are. And it all depends on how a work item is defined. And if you define a work item as reading the spec, and I guess a lot of us in the audience work with requirements, which I'm not surprised you haven't mentioned, but it is a buzzword, notions of how the product is supposed to meet expectations. A lot of testers decry the lack of specifications and requirements, but for some other testers, it's not a problem because they have heuristic oracles, ways of knowing how something is supposed to work based on their previous experience and epistemology, as you said, how it is they know what they know, and just experience or comparison with other products. So it'd be interesting to see, if that was a productive day, reading a 100-page spec and making a test outline, even though no testing got done, you're planning for testing in an appreciable way.
I just dropped the paper in the chat.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
It's called Software Developers' Perceptions of Productivity. And it does a similar thing that Michael Bolton and I like to do, which is analyzing people over the day and then graphing. Although they have it seems to me, the world's dumbest graph is in here. Sometimes people create graphs that are useless, but they look cool. And this is one of them. Like, I dare you to make any meaning of this. Oh, look at the legend over here of a whole bunch of circles with slightly different colors. And now I'm just gonna look over here, slightly different colors. I'm looking at this just going, I guess I can tell that a lot of stuff happened, but beyond that, this is not an effective visualization for me. I need to see the raw data and reanalyze it is what I would suggest. So anyway,
Okay,
There
cool.
you go.
Let's see. Shelly says there's a raised hand, which I can't see, but only she can see it. So yeah, Shelly, feel free to open the microphones so people can ask verbally.
Will do. Oh, she just put down her hand, so.
Oh. Okay, we answered it.
Yeah, I guess it might have been answered.
Okay.
I'm going to drop another paper in the chat, which is my article about John and his techniques as a test manager, which substantiates my my admiration for my brother.
Oh, that's right.
Who
So
I trained, I shall add.
that's right, 1995. Ben might know some of these too. I think these come from when we worked together at a company. So yeah, either raise your hand or drop a question in Q&A. I also just put a link in chat, James, to the Secret Life of Testers slide share that I found #1 hit on Google if you type in Secret Life of Testers. And I assume that's good.
Well, while we're waiting for someone to ask a question, I have a little story about a product manager. It was a product manager for Borland Pascal, the Borland Pascal project. And I was the test manager for the debugger, the Borland debugger and tools. And we shipped the debugger for both the Pascal version of Pascal and the version of C++. So I was telling him that we have to do 2 weeks of testing or something like that on this project. And he said, do you really have to do all that testing? I'm like, yes, I do, product manager. Stop trying to stop my testing process. We have to do this. It's responsible. And he said, but didn't you already test that exact software in the C++ context? I'm like, yeah, we did. Of course we did. Well, why do you have to retest it completely in the Pascal context? Isn't it less testing that you need to do? See, what he was talking about was epistemic testability, but I hadn't named it at that time back in 1993. And we went back and forth for a little bit, and then I realized I agreed with him. He was right. And then I started working out, you know how that is when you're about to lose an argument in your own mind, and you have to decide whether to eat the crow because you were just trying to tell the guy how you're an expert and he should leave this this stuff to you. And now you're going like, oh, actually, I hadn't thought of that. He's right. So I decided to take my heart in my hands and say, you know what? You're right. You know, I hadn't thought of it that way. Okay, I'm going to go with what you said. And he was so happy about that. I think I got a lot of favors and gift bags from him after that.
A lot of trust credit you built.
Because I let myself lose that argument. I mean, he was right. And it wasn't so painful. He didn't make it painful for me to lose that argument. And that's a good way for a product manager to interact with a test manager.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, James. This is great stuff. I encourage everybody as we wrap up here, we'll bring Joe back. But before we do, feel free to reach out to James at satisfice.com. It's on the first slide of this. So when the recording gets posted, Shelley will also post the slides up on.
I'll give her a link to the PDF.
Yeah, Quardev.com/PMSIG. And but thanks, man. Thanks for doing this. Some great stuff. I'm looking forward to talking to you a little more deeply about some of these slides. And
all right, cool.
So. All right, Joe. Closing thoughts.
Thanks, James. I appreciate it, James. It's great to see you and hear your voice again. I had one note that I really liked, and that was testing as craftsmanship. And it's something that we try to infiltrate in our company is, you know, testing is evaluation and consultation on user interface design based on seeing so many programs and iPhone apps and everything else. So I thought that was a really good point. And anyway, thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for joining us for this.
Thank you for your time.
Great.
And thanks
My
everyone for
pleasure.
joining
It
us.
was
Yeah.
great for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
See you in 2 months.
Yeah,
See you in 2
anybody
months.
else have anything else they want to chime in? Any questions?
Yep.
Raise your hands.
Nope, I think there's just thank yous and yeah, we're winding
Thank
down. So, all right. Thanks everybody.
All right.
See you
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. All right.
Yeah.